Hello everybody, welcome to beautiful Vancouver and Design Code launch. This is an action-packed online event for the Android developers. Today we're going to focus on building Android applications from large screen devices to dual screens. My name is Mikko Peltola and I'll be your host today. This event is brought to you by Avalon CX in collaboration with Microsoft. Avalon CX is a design and software development boutique consultancy. During the next 3 hours, we're not only going to talk about how to build winning applications, we're also going to ask why. Why should you build applications for large and dual screens? What are the motivations of the developers? And what are the benefits for the companies? So let's look into the agenda of the day. What are we going to be talking about? The name has a clue in it, Design Code Launched. So let me walk you through the presenters and the content. Before we go there, let me remind you that this is an interactive session, so you can leave questions into the chat box at any time, and we encourage you to do that. We are glad that you have joined us, and we hope you enjoy the event. Like any good development starts with design, so will our session today. So I will introduce first Claudio Afonso, who is my colleague, co-founder, and the design lead at Avalon CX. Claudio also has experience with the Surface Duo, going back already all the time before the launch of the first Duo device. So as he has been shaping and building this new category, he has some insights that might be quite interesting and relevant for people who are building applications for these modern form factors. Claudio will also bring with him Mehul Shah, who is a UX designer at Microsoft. Mehul focuses on building delightful and scalable user experience for the Surface Duo. He's working on system-level components, toolkits, and design patterns, integrating all the endpoints and various partners. After we have built a strong foundation through the design of the applications, we're going to move to the development of the applications and bring on stage Ilpo Niva. Ilpo is also my colleague and co-founder and has a long history in building mobile devices, services, and experiences. He's done this on 3 continents over 2 decades. Ilpo has also experience working with Microsoft, so he's been involved in the Surface Duo before the launch of the first Duo device. With Ilpo, we're going to also have on stage Cesar Vallante. Cesar is from Microsoft and he has been building applications on Android since the beginning of time. He's been successful in working on services, products that has been used by millions of users, and now is focusing on the developer experience of the Surface Duo. In that capacity, he is helping developers build large screen and dual screen applications. For the third part of the presentation, I'm going to continue with you. So I have been working on the mobile industry, building mobile phones that sold tens of millions of units and billions of dollars in revenues. I've been building mobile services and worked with the developers. So on the third part of the presentation, we're going to talk about launch. So once you have designed an application that has relevance for your target audience and have successfully built the application, it's time to take your masterpiece to the market, to reap the rewards of your insight and hard work. So the final chapter is going to focus on the business side. We're going to look at the motivations of the developers. It's important to understand what are the motivations of the developers, whether you are an individual developer or running a team. Depending on your targets, your measure of success will be different. We'll also look at the company's approach. Why do we claim that we are talking about a new category rather than an anomaly? We're going to explore that more in detail. Once we have covered the business side, I'm going to introduce Andras Nemeth to the stage with me. Andras has been working at Atlassian on the native applications for Android, and specifically the Jira product. Andras has 14 years of experience. He's been working on projects large and small. He's worked with teams that have built mobile operating systems. He's done research. He's worked at startups and built applications before joining the mobile team at Atlassian, where he was building the native Jira cloud for Android. So this is the agenda of today. I want to remind you again that you can be part of this. You can post your questions into the chat, and we encourage you to do that. So next we're going to move into content, and we're going to introduce my colleague Claudio on stage. And the topics that Claudio and Mehul will be covering are, firstly, they will look into the intricacies of large screen and dual screen phones. From their perspective, they will provide some do's and don'ts, some recommendations what to do and what not to do. And finally, they will give you a recommended starting point so that you can smoothen your way to the success. Claudio, the stage is yours.
Thanks for the intro, Miko. Joining me today is Mehul Shah from the Microsoft Surface team, and we'll introduce him in a moment. Large screen foldables and dual screen devices are unique in their form, but also in the user experience, and they signal the new wave of mobile devices. It's fair to say that in the past 2 years, we've seen somewhat of a design renaissance in the mobile phone world, something that we haven't seen since about 2007, and I, for one, am excited, both as a consumer and as a designer. Phones don't have to be these monolithic rectangles anymore. We now have foldables, we have flip phones, we even have dual screen devices. And the boundaries being pushed today are driven by a need for greater screen real estate and the proven productivity benefits of a large canvas. For product designers, these new form factors offer a huge opportunity to reshape the culture of work. Now, that's a bold statement to make, but let me back it up. There's a Nielsen Norman article that talks about why people perform the tasks that they do on mobile devices. Think about a desktop experience, for example, reading an email. Now think about that same experience on a smartphone. Your mobile app is a pared-down version of the desktop app, and there's a very good reason for that. Studies have shown that people are not comfortable performing complex tasks on small screens. What foldables have been successful in doing is giving us a much larger canvas in a portable format. And in doing that, they've allowed us to consider traditional large screen workflows in a mobile context. Make no mistake, reshaping the culture of work is not going to be a walk in the park. But our jobs as designers is to rethink what a mobile experience could be by looking at it through a large screen lens. As designers, you've always thought about the person you're designing for and what they're trying to get done. But now I urge you to think about what they could achieve now with a larger screen on the go. Like I said earlier, the smartphone space has just gotten really exciting. So, how do we tackle these new screen types, orientations, and their other intricacies? Let's start at the beginning. If I were to distill the job of an interaction designer, and by this I'm broadly referring to product designers, UX designers, UI designers, experience designers, and visual designers, we ultimately have 2 jobs to do. The first job is to design an experience that is functional, reliable, and usable, and enables customers to get their job done without adding any friction. The second job is to support the software engineers in bringing this experience to life. After all, we're all working towards the same goal, and we share in the success and the failure. I was fortunate enough to be on a small team that designed the OS experience for the Microsoft Duo back in 2019. It was a really exciting challenge because this was a brand new form factor, but also there were no blueprints or guidelines for devices like these, short of the developer documentation. So we really had our work cut out for us. And our approach started with 2 very basic guiding principles, which I think are still relevant today, so I want to share them with you. The first principle was, don't change something just because you can or just because you want to. This sounds simple enough, but there really is wisdom in this advice. If users are already familiar and satisfied with how something works, and in my case it was the Android experience, leave it alone. You're going to have enough challenges soon enough. The second was, only change what doesn't make sense for a large screen, foldable, or dual screen experience. And I'm going to expand on that. Now, you might be thinking, what's the big deal? It's just an Android app, so just put it on a large screen or foldable and you're done. But it's not that simple. To the end user, foldables need to be as intuitive and easy to use as a single screen device. For designers and developers, there's a lot more complexity to foldables than there are in single screen devices. For example, postures. Because foldables can bend and change, you have more than 2 aspect ratios and layouts to consider. There are numerous positions or postures that the hardware can be used in, which lead to unique ergonomic considerations. Crucially, there's also more real estate, which invites a more complex workflow. just like I pointed out earlier in the Nielsen-Norman study. And we're going to look at this in more detail. But now I want to introduce my guest. Joining us today from Seattle is Mehul Shah from the Microsoft Service team. Welcome, Mehul. So most people know about Microsoft, but can you please tell us a bit about yourself and the Surface team and your role within it?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for having me here, Claudio. And Surface started out as a really small team, and today it has grown a lot with its laptop segment. But most recently, it has also been tapping into smartphones to bring more productivity on the go. So I work on a product called Surface Duo, which is a foldable Android device. And there are quite a few designers who work on the product side, but I mainly work on the developer experience team as a UX designer, but I work on designing system-level components, toolkits, design patterns, and I integrate across all endpoints with multiple partners, internally and externally, to help applications adapt to foldables.
Can you briefly introduce a few of the design patterns for foldable devices?
Yeah, so by studying over tons of apps and from research, we've observed that there exists like several patterns that exist from a variety of several different applications. And that led us to 5 different design patterns for dual screens of foldables, which are basically like the first one is extended canvas, where you're having an application span across 2 screens beneath the hinge, and it can scroll around the whole 2 surfaces of the display. Then you have list detail, where you have like one part of an application on one screen, and then you use a hierarchy to lay out information which are detailed on the second screen or the second pane layout. And then you have 2-page, which is like the most ergonomic way to lay out an information for content consumption. And then you have like dual view, which is displaying 2 different types of views on either screens. Like it can be a 2D representation on one screen or a 3-dimensional representation on another screen. So that's dual view. And then companion pane is like is the last design pattern where you can separate the content for consumption with the tools that help manipulate that content. So, for example, if you were to have a photo application, when you're using a filter, you would have to go to a next page and apply those filters and come back to that the home page. But if you have a dual screen with companion pane design pattern, you can have like list of images on one. You can have an image on one screen, and then you can use a second screen to have those tools help manipulate the content. So in short, like design patterns like showcase the possibilities of dual screen app scenarios and like how all the pieces can come together to bring in a meaningful product experience. So the best part about design patterns is that they aren't specific to Surface Duo at all. In fact, they can also be applied to other foldables and larger screen devices in general.
So for our audience joining us today, we could talk for hours about design patterns, but for the sake of this presentation, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to keep moving. But tune back in and visit our website after this talk, and you'll have access to all the resources that we mentioned today. What are some of the top do's and don'ts for designers to consider when designing for foldable devices?
Of course, like the hinge or the seam is something that comes with the device, and with it brings in uniqueness. To understand the hinge or the seam, we have to first understand like how we see the world around us. So imagine you are in a room with a window, and when you look outside the window, you don't pay attention to the window pane or the divider separating the window. Our minds automatically connect the unseen parts when we look at an object or is seen outside. So when it comes to designing for foldables, the center of the folding screen has a tactile difference due to the device hinge that enables folding. So it is advisable that when designing experiences for larger screens and foldables, avoid placing elements around the area and instead have to consider having the UI elements that are aligned in such a way such that they follow good ergonomics.
Those are some great points. Thanks for sharing those details. I've given a few specific examples of what we mean. When considering app launch dialogues, note that by default, they're going to be centered on the screen. But instead, be aware that they should be moved to the left or the right screen, because when a dialogue is stretched across the seam, it could be hard to read or it could be difficult to interact with. Similarly, the bottom menu should be moved to one side or the other and never stretched across both seams for the same reasons as I mentioned before. User-invoked context menus should treat the seam as a boundary, especially if they're invoked close to the edge of the screen. And in-app drop-down menus and expandable containers should change the direction of expansion to avoid crossing that seam. When an app is spanned, just remember to try and move the UI to the center of the top or the left screen instead of being centered over the seam, again for the same reason as before. And one solution is what we call snapping to the seam, and this involves designers laying out your grids accordingly. So when you have an app, for example, like a calendar app, make sure that your grid pattern allows for the content not to be spanning the seam, because it could be difficult to read or it could be difficult to interact with, just like in this example. So now we understand that apps can appear in a spanning mode, utilizing the real estate of both screens. Another opportunity that I'd like to discuss is the ability to have two apps open side by side, one on each side of the seam. The example I'm about to show illustrates the power of foldable devices. This is something that no other mobile phone has been able to do smoothly until now. Let me set the stage. Imagine that you've just wrapped up a meeting, and while you were presenting, your colleague sitting next to you was taking notes of the action items. A few minutes later, you hear a notification, and you reach into your pocket and pull out your foldable device, and you read the new email that you've just received from your teammate.
That happened so fast, I might need a recap. Your email contained a list of action items, and being an action-oriented person, you launched your To-Do app on the other screen, and then proceeded to drag and drop the list of items from your email on screen A to your tasks on screen B.
That right there was deceivingly simple. From the user's perspective, that was a signature moment. But behind the scenes, what we've done is taken a traditionally desk-bound experience and ported it over to mobile seamlessly for the first time ever. From a designer's perspective, that represents the paradigm shift that we need to have when designing experiences for large-screen foldables and dual-screen devices. As of now, that familiar and intuitive drag-and-drop interaction pattern is only available on a small group of apps. But that's only because very few designers and developers have built that functionality into their app experiences. With large-screen foldables and two-screen devices gaining in popularity, apps that include signature moments like the one you've just seen will rise to the top and leave the competition behind. Another example I want to demonstrate is one called app pairing. And in this example, we have two complementary apps launched simultaneously side by side, giving the user the ability to multitask between those two apps. Another example I want to demonstrate is something called app pairing. And in this example, two complementary apps are launched simultaneously and appear side by side, giving the user the ability to multitask between these two apps. Now, this isn't anything new. For those of you that are familiar with Android, you'll know that this has existed for a while. But in the past, this would launch two split-screen experiences with the two apps sharing the one screen. And while this was cool, it didn't actually provide a good user experience. In comparison, today, you can have two fully functioning apps running simultaneously, offering you twice the experience of a single screen device. If I was to sum up the paradigm shift, it would be this. Don't think of designing for a large screen foldable as designing for a generic mobile device. Think of it as designing a large screen experience, and then think about all the unique experiences that may help your users achieve their tasks. This will push you to look past the things that we take for granted and start to think, what if we did it this way? Mehul, off the top of your head, can you think of any other opportunities that designers should look out for? And if so, how should a designer approach a situation like this to maximize the benefits of a large screen foldable or dual screen device?
Yeah, so there are a ton of opportunities for designers to become really creative. When it comes to designing or adapting their existing Android application foldables, there are a number of different ways you can actually leverage the dual screen form factor or the foldable form factor. So let's take, for example, like you have an app and you want to like drag and drop elements from one app to another app. Well, you could do that, like how you would do on a normal PC or a desktop. Similarly, on a foldable device, you can have like two apps running side by side, and you can have your elements like drag and drop between the two screens. Or let's take another scenario where you want to have like multiple instances of your app show up. So, for example, if you're to compose an email or you're sending a message, like a text message to a friend, you can have that application open on one screen, and you can have your Files app open on another screen, where I can easily view whatever attachment you're looking for, and then drag and drop that attachment into the conversation chat. So these are some of the daily use cases that you can work on the folding form factor applications. Or if you want to even go beyond that, so let's take for example you have a game, and you can have the game running on one screen, and you can actually have another screen to have a controller that can adapt to the kind of game that you're trying to play. So for example, if you were playing a game, you can have a controller map those buttons to those game elements. So that's where Pane and Pane comes a lot into play, the kind of design pattern that would help show up the game kind of scenarios. So let's take another scenario where you have a camera that points to an object, and then you use a secondary display to basically augment those 3D filters and apply those 3D filters. So those are some use cases that you can actually design something for a very different use case. So let's take another last example where you have a camera lens that points to a text, and using AI, you can basically extract the text from that camera, and then you can drag and drop into a Notes app, which I find is pretty cool. So I would say possibilities on Surface Duo and the other foldables are just limitless.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing those examples. Those are great. Okay, so by now, some of you might be asking, how can I get started? Where do I go? Well, what some of you might not know is that Mehul over here has already designed a Surface Duo design kit for Figma, which is free to use. And Mehul, I'm curious to know, can you just share some of the motivations behind starting this design kit for everyone here to have a better understanding?
Yeah. So when it comes to foldables, there were no ways that a designer could learn or design for foldables. And the only resources that were available was basically the one-page documentation on Google's Android developer guide talking about design. But again, everything that was displayed here was in this site was in terms of code and APIs that will help developers adapt their applications for folding devices. So I felt like being a designer, I could resonate this a lot with the designers out there. Since the only place someone could learn about designing for Android was the Android material guideline resources, which didn't really cover much about the use cases for foldables. So this basically led to my motivation to create one for Surface Duo and expand to other foldables. So today I'm actually really happy to see that with the introduction to Material 3 a couple of weeks back, the Material team at Google have started to lay out a foundation for designing for foldables and other large screen Android devices. So I really like the direction from the motivation that we had on building this kit is expanding to several different areas.
So let me understand this right. I think if I'm reading between the lines, I'm hearing you say that this design kit in Figma isn't exclusive to Surface Duo. It's also available for other foldables and for designers to use for other foldables. Is that correct?
Yeah. The design kit today, although it makes it seem like it's specific for the Surface Duo, well, that is correct in a way. But we've also observed that these patterns, the design patterns and guidelines, work nearly well for other foldables too. So we're exploring ways to understand how we can make these available for other foldables too.
That's amazing news because we're all keen to design flexible experiences that are device agnostic. And regardless of whether you're designing an experience using Fluent design system or the Material design system or even the Airbnb design system, the fundamental design patterns that we've highlighted here today remain the same. So we've touched on a few topics from the larger screens capable of more complex workflows and the complexity of designing for multiple layouts, which brings me to another topic, how we work. The design tools that we use are really great at streamlining our workflows and making the process of handing off to engineers a lot smoother. But I think we also have room to improve. And as a designer with a background in visual design, I've been guilty more than I'd like to admit of trying to perfect my work before I share it with the devs. But this isn't good for the overall project, and in fact, it actually causes a bottleneck. And as I mentioned earlier, a large part of the designer's role is to support the engineers. So in my experience, the one way to foster this collaborative culture is to share designs with the developers early on, invite their feedback, and be more collaborative with other departments in general. The sooner you get your team involved in the ideas, the more the ownership is shared, and shared ownership galvanizes teams to perform.
In addition to kickstarting the dialogue and idea sharing, it also enables you to test the experience and start making those incremental improvements which are critical to the success of your work. Mehul's Duo Design Kit for Figma is an amazing resource to get you up and running in minutes. I highly recommend that you install it and start using it. And as he mentioned, it's not exclusive to the Duo. He's purposely built it to adapt and scale to other devices, so you can get your designs into a dev environment in no time at all. We're nearing the end of the talk, and I hope you found this as insightful and as interesting as I did. Mehul, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. You've created a fantastic resource, and on behalf of the design and developer community, I just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate all your hard work. Your design kit has empowered everyone to build a successful large screen foldables and dual device experience. And hearing you explain those design patterns really crystallized things for me, and hopefully for everyone else as well. And you've enabled people to just start off on the right foot. As you mentioned, building on the learnings of others really provides a solid foundation, and we're hoping that the people watching here today can start to build two-screen aware apps and take advantage of what these new form factors are really capable of. As a recap, here are some of the key takeaways for building successful experiences on large, foldable, and dual-screen devices. The 5 design patterns are here to guide you towards the right solution for any experience that spans across a seam or 2 screens. The design kit is not exclusive to the Duo. It's applicable to all foldables too. And it's designed with speed in mind. It's really here to get you from zero to a working prototype in very little time, which is critical. And it's easy to use. I mean, for anyone here who's familiar with component-based design, this is going to be a breeze to work with. And lastly, this is the future of mobile devices, and we'd really love you to be a part of it. So that's a wrap for the design portion. Thanks for your time today, and back to you, Mikko.
Thank you very much, Claudio. Thank you, Mehul. So we're going to move from design to implementation of applications, and I'm going to hand over to Ilpo Niva and Cesar Vallante. They will be talking about bridging from design to development. That is something we feel very strongly about at Avalon CX. Design and development should be brought closer together, so that will be one of the key topics. They will also explore the capabilities that the Android platform provides and what are the opportunities that gives for the developers. Thirdly, they will drill deeper into the window manager and the sliding pane layout. Ilpo, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mikko. It's my pleasure to be here talking you a bit more about the development approach to the creating applications for large screen and all the way to dual screens. In my presentation, I will not go through code line by line, but I want this also to address designers and people interested about creating the applications to know what are the latest opportunities to create applications for large and dual screens. During these presentations, you have already heard, and most probably you will hear it again, that the amount of different form factors for the Android platform has increased significantly. You can see on the left top corner the old-fashioned smartphones, but then what has come to enhance the portfolio of different type of products is tablets, foldables, different type of foldables with hinge or without any hinge, and it's all the time increasing. And like this is not enough, there's also the different posters which can change during and while the application is running. Folding posters or spanning posters. This will naturally create requirements, but also a huge amount of opportunities to develop software and application that will create extremely good and focused user experience, customer experience for the end users. What we will be talking today is we will be focusing telling you a few selected libraries that will help to develop and tell you more about the opportunities what you will have. We will talk about Jetpack window manager. We will talk about sliding pane layout, navigation rail, and then some specific foldable libraries at the end of the presentation. If we look at the Jetpack window manager and the key features that it has, it provides the simple way for the developers to get the metrics about the current window and or the display, telling you about the layout information, about the display features, about fold, hinge, interface, and so forth, and also provides you the information about the folding feature. So is the device at the moment, is it flat or 90 degrees folded or fully folded? Here you can see an example application, which is ebook reader, that has been built looking at the different window and different folding features. On the left-hand side, you can see the traditional smartphone, how it's represented there. Then the tablet, and the middle one, you can see that when the hinge is horizontal, even though it's it doesn't have a visible hinge, it's continuous screen, but still there is a slight break in there, so that will help for the reader, for the readers to read when there is, if it's folded slightly. And on the right-hand side, you can see how it's represented in the Surface Duo, when it's either only on the left side window or fully span on the both windows, and how the both screens and how the windows are spanned on the both sides. At this moment, I would like to introduce you Cesar Vallante from Microsoft, who has been working with the foldable large screen development for quite a long time. So Cesar, could you please tell a few words about yourself for the audience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ilpo. So hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Cesar. I'm Cesar Vallante. I work on the Surface Duo developer experience team, where we try to help developers, where we build different libraries that will help you in order to enhance your foldable and dual screen apps. I'm happy to be here with all of you to share knowledge and to learn. Yeah.
Thank you, Cesar. And I went through the GitHub, and I see that you've been doing a lot of contributions and your own software there. And we actually are going to take a few of those here as our example, and have already taken that. So we were just talking about this window manager and how window manager can help you to build the applications on a different platforms and different form factor, not different platform, different form factors for Android. So could you open up a bit about your experience on the window manager?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, well, first, window manager is probably, I mean not probably, but it's the library that every developer should use or should be aware in order whenever a developer, whenever you start developing or creating an app for dual screen, foldable, and large screen devices. So first thing I will highlight that this is the main library that we have coming from Google. So my experience with Window Manager what Window Manager provides is the awareness of the different features the different features that a new form factor device such as Surface Duo or any other foldable device has. Like for instance, in the case of Surface Duo, where we know that we have a physical hinge. So for instance, Jetpack Window Manager can provide you the information about the boundaries of that folding feature. So with that info, developers can react about, okay, so here is the folding feature, here is the hinge. So then I should put the content to the left or to the right, or for instance, when the folding feature is horizontal, I should put the content on the top or the bottom of the folding feature. So I would highlight this will be the main thing. Definitely there are more things. So I don't know if we want to cover all the different features here.
Yes, please. We already touched a bit about the different features, but would like to hear your kind of experience on those as well.
Perfect, super. So, well, as I mentioned, so I will say that the first thing is the boundary. So with Jetpack Window Manager, we know the boundaries of the folding feature. So for instance, in Surface Duo, you will know like where the hinge is located in taking into account the coordinates like left, top, right, and bottom. This is the main thing, and then but also Jetpack Window Manager provides you also different and really important information. For instance, the posture of that the device can take. So for instance, actually currently in the current status of Jetpack Window Manager provides you the information about if the device is open, for instance, in the case of Surface Duo, in 180 degrees, that it will be the position in flat position. So Jetpack Window Manager will tell you that, okay, the device now is in flat position. And when the device, for instance, is open in 90 degrees, then Jetpack Window Manager will tell you that, okay, the device is in half open position. That this is very useful, for instance, in this position for like, imagine that you are creating an app that, I don't know, that is taking advantage of the keyboard, having the keyboard, so having the device, like it will be a small laptop, and you are typing in the bottom screen, and then you have your content on the top screen. So with the different postures that the Jetpack Window Manager provides, you can then react and then to optimize to the different scenarios that you can have. Then, apart of postures, we have three properties actually that are very important. So the first one is the orientation, that is going to tell you, Window Manager is going to tell you about if the folding feature is placed vertically or horizontally. So this is also helpful. So then you know, okay, like with this together with the posture, then you can think about, okay, now the device is taking this position. It's like it will be like a laptop, or it's in 10 mode and so on. So different combinations. Then also Window Manager gives you the information about if the folding feature is separating the content. So it can be true or false. If the folding feature is separating the content that is rendered under it. And also the type of the occlusion type. If the hinge or the folding feature is hiding some bits, then you are going to have an occlusion type full, or in the case that the content is not occluding, then you get an occlusion type of none. So they are the main things regarding Jetpack Window Manager and folding feature. And the second thing that Jetpack Window Manager provides is the window metrics. That then you can, with the window metrics, you can get the information about the current window metrics that your app is taking that specific time when the app is deployed. So you can get the current window metrics that the app is using in that specific display. But also, Jetpack Window Manager provides you the information about the maximum window metrics. So, for instance, in the case that you are running the app in single screen mode, you will get current window metrics associated to that specific display, but also you are going to get the information about the maximum window metrics, so the whole display area, even though if you are not using the other display or the other part of the display. I think currently this is the main things. Definitely Google announced other things, like actually in the latest Android Dev Summit, I think a couple of weeks ago, like for instance, a feature that they are working on that is embedded activities. So then you can have two activities side by side. So this is really helpful, and actually is going to help developers a lot when they are refactoring an app to look well on foldable and dual screen devices. So you don't have to play with fragments if you don't want. Now you can place activities side by side. And I would say that. I mean, definitely Window Manager also provides you, if I had time, I can also give you more info about different artifacts that Window Manager provides. So for developers, you just have to, you have to use an artifact in your build gradle, and then you are ready to go. Then you can use Jetpack Window Manager, you can instantiate Window Manager, you can get the info from it, and so on. But in order to help developers to the specific use case or specific scenarios that developers have in their current apps, also Google has created different artifacts on top of Jetpack Window Manager to help on those specific scenarios. So for instance, for developers or for apps that they are using Java, we also have a Java artifact that you have to use it on top of the main Jetpack Window Manager, and with that Java artifact is going to help you when you have a Java code base, and also when you are using like callbacks in order to get information in a synchronous way. That this is actually using callbacks is very Java oriented. Then also, so for instance, so currently Jetpack Window Manager gives you the information through a coroutine flow of data. So then you subscribe to or you get a flow of data, and you are listening for that, and then you get the information. There are many developers, many apps that they are using RxJava. RxJava has been there, and the community has been using RxJava for long time. So there are many scenarios that since you are using RxJava, you really don't need Flow. I mean, maybe you can use both, or if you want, you can use both. But there is not really a need for that if you are happy with RxJava. So also taking into account that, Google also has created 2 different artifacts, one for Java RxJava 2 and the other for RxJava 3. That they are also that wrapping the main window manager artifact, so then you don't have to really use coroutines flows. You just use RxJava, you have the observable, the observer, and you get the information. And the last thing that I wanted to highlight is the testing artifact. So we also have so Jetpack Window Manager has also a testing artifact that is very helpful in order to create mocks of the folding feature. So in order, for instance, so in testing, when we create a UI test, it is very useful that we can create a mock folding feature in order to, okay, when there is this folding feature, then my UI has to look differently. If we are able to have a folding feature, then we can create those assertions. So this artifact, what provides is the ability for you to do that, to create mocks of a folding feature, where you can define even the size of the folding feature, the position, the posture, so vertical, horizontal, and so on. So this is very helpful. And I believe that's all regarding Window Manager. So I know that it's a lot of info, but yeah, we are here to learn, and definitely we have a lot of docs and information that they are very helpful, also coming from Google. So yeah, I would say so far, this is what we have.
Thank you, Cesar. Really appreciate the insight that you were able to provide us, and your excitement is coming through through the TV.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Earlier in this our presentation, we talk about not only that how can we help developers, but also designers as creating a great customer experience. It requires good collaboration between the designers and developers. So what would you like to say for the developers in just maybe one couple of sentences that the benefits of the Windows Manager and how can they take that into account on their designs? Yeah.
This is actually a very good question. So if I have to highlight something regarding Window Manager, is that it's not just oriented for foldable devices. Also, you can get with that information, like for instance, the window metrics info that also Jetpack Window Manager provides you is going to help you also when you are developing for large screen or also for single screen. So no matter what, always having more information is useful. So and also Jetpack Window Manager is here to support like all devices, like single screen devices, or all form factor devices, such as single screen, but also new ones like foldables and large screen. So I would say that Jetpack Window Manager gives you the ability to, or provides you the information about the device or the specifics things of the device that for you they are interesting whenever you create new UI experiences for your users when you are targeting specifically foldable and dual screen and large screen devices. So I would say this probably is the main thing. Yeah, and then I don't know if I think was a second question. I think Nilpo or like
no. That was just kind of a few sentences to go through that. Okay, so next we are going to talk about the sliding pane layout. The sliding pane layout libraries have been there in part of the Android SDKs and APIs for quite a long time already. But in the recent releases, they've added dual screen foldable support on the sliding pane layout. So we are using here, actually again, Cesar created the application from the Git where we can showcase, demo the sliding pane layout and how that works in a different form factor. So Cesar, could you open up a bit what's happening here on these different screens?
Yeah, definitely. So, so first, for those of you that you are not aware about the sliding pane layout, basically what provides you is a way to navigate through your app in covering the least detail pattern. what is the list detail pattern? Is just in case you are not aware. So the list detail pattern is a very common pattern where you have, like imagine that a list of items in your screen, and then you tap on an item, and then another screen is showing up on top of the list with the details specific of that item. So for instance, this is very common in an email app. In an email app, you have the list of emails, you tap on an email, and then you have the detail of that email. In a to-do app, exactly the same. You have the list of to-dos, you tap on an item, then the details of that to-do, and many other use cases. It's very common, this pattern. Okay, so having said that, sliding pane layout was implementing that, but with the new release that Ipo has mentioned before, exactly, sliding pane layout now is foldable aware. So whenever a sliding pane layout sliding pane layout, so it's foldable aware because under the hood is using Jetpack Window Manager. So with the information that we have seen before about what Jetpack Window Manager provides you, like the information about the folding feature, so where the folding feature is located, the posture of the folding feature, if it's including the content or not, and so on. A sliding pane layout takes that info and then adds the calculation in order to, when you run an app that is using a sliding pane layout in single screen mode, you tap on an item and then you have a new view with the details. But in foldable devices, with Jetpack Window Manager, with the info that provides Jetpack Window Manager, then you are going to see the list of items in one display, in the one side of the folding feature, and the detail of a specific item that you have tapped in the other screen or the other display. And developers, they don't have to do anything. It's just you define just the two different containers, one for the list. I mean, I'm always talking about list, but it can be anything, any view or any fragment. It's up to you what you want to place there. So, but talking about the list detail pattern, so where you define the list of items, a container for that, and then you define another container for the detail. And that's all. And then, like magically, it's not magically, it's because Jetpack Window Manager is there. So it's going to help you, it's going to display the two containers, taking into account the folding feature. So this is for foldables, but also for tablets or large screen. Also, you can define as well the minimum size of the containers. So then also imagine that you deploy or you run your app using a sliding pane layout in a tablet that has a lot of room, like a big tablet, imagine, or a TV or something. Then you also can benefit of having more area, more display area, and then you are going to add the list of items in one side and the details in the other side, because you define the specific size that you wanted for each container. So yeah, I believe we have covered mostly everything. This is a fantastic component, and definitely my tip will be if you want to implement list detail pattern, sliding pane layout is going to help you in all form factors: single screen, foldable, larger screen, without any new addition. It's just setting up the containers, and that's all.
Okay, thank you, Cesar, both insight and your expertise, sharing your expertise with the team. Here is an example of a sliding pane layout that we took. Also, this is an ebook reader, and you can see how easily it's working on the different form factors. On the left-hand side, traditional smartphone, the sliding pane layout, you can slide basically the list on the left side, and automatically when you click select item from the list, the pane will slide away, and it will represent you the full reading that you were supposed to do. Then if you look at how this behaves on the tablet, at the same thing, same code base, everything same, you can see that because of the configuration and definition of the pane width, minimum width, maximum width, we can see that it remains there constantly, the list on the left side visible, and then on the right side, on the right pane, you can see the text. If we implement this, deploy the same code then on the foldable devices, you can see that on the top left, two Duo samples, it behaves pretty much similarly to what it behaves on the smartphone. But then on the bottom one, you can see that we can define that the left screen will contain the sliding list, the list of the information, and then the right-hand side will contain the text. Of course, we could even improve this, that it's a typical ebook reader experience where you have the text on the both sides of the screens, even when you're slightly folding it down. But that would just be an opportunity to improve the code base based on the expected designed experience. We just talked a bit about the sliding pane layouts, but at the same time, one of the critical UI element is of course the navigation rail, and with the Jetpack libraries, there's always also opportunity to modify the navigation rail location and layout based on the screen sizes and posters of the foldable devices. Cesar, would you like to share your insight on this as well?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So material navigation rail is also a fantastic new component that actually is not very famous now, but I think it will be little by little, because what it tries to, or what provides, is very interesting. The way that that now users or can navigate through apps. So basically, navigation rail, exactly what provides is a pane or navigation pane on the side, usually to the left, but can be also to the right, where with the different options, the different areas of your app, and then you navigate through those areas. So this pattern is very useful when you have more display area. So I'm thinking about more display area. For instance, Surface Duo, when the app is expanded, now you have a lot of display area. So there, the navigation rail makes a lot of sense, and also in a tablet or large screen, it makes a lot of, or foldable as well, exactly, because you have more display area. So usually, or there are different ways to navigate through an app. We can use the navigation drawer, also the button navigation, tabs layout, and so on. But that they are fantastic ways to navigate through the apps. But when you run an app, for instance, that is using button navigation in a foldable layout with more display area, or a tablet with even more display area, navigating through the button navigation is not really handy. No, your thumb has to go there, or your fingers. No, different fingers to navigate through the apps, even with 2 fingers sometimes, because the button navigation is using the whole width of the display. So here is where navigation rail fits very well, because it's like you have all the sections there, like better places, and that takes also less useful area from your app. Instead, like for instance, will be navigation, button navigation or tab layout. A really useful scenario that actually we are seeing in the slides is when like moving or changing from button navigation to navigation rail. So with the help of Jetpack Window Manager, so for instance, we could imagine that we create an app that is using button navigation to navigate through the app. Okay, works well for single screen devices, and also works well always in a foldable device or large screen. But as we have mentioned, button navigation there is a bit odd. So with Jetpack Window Manager, for instance, when that specific app is running in a foldable device, as we have seen before, we can detect if there is a folding feature. So if we know that information, that there is something there is a folding feature, then we can change our UX in order to provide a different way to navigate through the app. And for instance, as we can see in the slides, is where we can move from a button navigation to a navigation rail whenever we think that is the better scenario. And I believe that's all. I mean, the usage is also very, very easy, just to define the navigation rail, the navigation graph, and so on. So very, very easy, very helpful as well. And by the way, there is also a Jetpack Compose version of the navigation rail. So for those that are already doing Jetpack Compose, you are ready to go, because there is the same component for Jetpack Compose.
Okay. Thank you, Cesar, for the insights. The last set of libraries that we would like to talk with you is the foldable libraries, containing the foldable layout, foldable frame layout, bottom navigation view, and the recycle view. And Cesar, your insights of these libraries and how to use those in the best possible way.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, actually I'm really happy to talk about this because this is the libraries, some of the libraries that my team has built. So yeah, really happy to talk about those libraries. So I also would like to tell a little bit to say a little bit of a story. So or history regarding the history of our lives. So before October, all our libraries, they were created in order to work well on Surface Duo. They were working well, so the Surface Duo layout, button navigation, tab layout, all of the different libraries, they were well on Surface Duo. They were handling the hinge. There was all the information was shown properly, and so on. But so we started working actually on updating all of our libraries in order to support all foldable devices. So this is actually I think it's super interesting and super important that not our libraries, they support now all different foldable devices that support Jetpack Window Manager. So with just one implementation, we are covering all different foldable devices. This is a win for us as developers and maintainers of the library, but also and even more for developers that they are enhancing their apps, so they don't have to choose, okay, this is a library for that specific device, this is a library for another device. No. Just we have a set of libraries, even from Google as well as we have seen, Sliding Pane Layout, Jetpack Window Manager, our libraries as well, that they are able to run on all foldable devices. Okay, having said that, I can go little by little through the different libraries that Ilpo has mentioned. So, for instance, the foldable layout is a very useful library that is going to help you in order to implement basically all dual screen patterns: list detail, companion pane, dual view, and so on. But more specifically, actually, so since we have already a sliding pane layout that covers this detail view, I will highlight that even this component helps you also in the other patterns, companion pane, dual view, and so on. Why? With foldable layout, actually foldable layout and sliding pane layout, they are very similar but different. I'm not going to talk about the sliding pane layout because we have seen already, but foldable layout basically what provides you is the ability to define different containers for the different specific configuration or different configuration that your app can take when it's running on a foldable device. So for instance, with foldable layout, you can define one container that is going to be used when the app is running on single screen device. So basically then you have your UI, no problem. It's like a normal layout with a normal layout that where you have to provide the information, the different widgets, the different components there. But the cool thing of the foldable layout is also gives you the ability to set up the container for single screen mode, but also for foldable devices, or in our Surface Duo scenario, dual screen scenario. So it gives you the ability to also define define the content for a container that is for the left screen, left display, or the right screen, right display. Always taking into account the folding feature, the hinge in the Surface Duo, folding feature in other foldable device. So, and actually, basically, with what I mentioned, basically now you are thinking that, but this is very similar to a sliding pane layout. Yes, but the sliding pane layout implements list detail pattern, and is the main focus for the sliding pane layout. So, for instance, if you run an app using a sliding pane layout in Surface Duo, when the app is rotated in dual landscape, so the hinge is placed horizontally, then the separation, the two containers, they are still in vertical, because this is how it was implemented in a sliding pane layout. This is it's not that it's an error or something. No, it's because this is the goal for a sliding pane layout. Foldable layout is able to handle also when the hinge or folding feature is placed horizontally. So then you can define as well the content for the top display and the content for the bottom display. So coming back then to the dual screen patterns that I mentioned before about where foldable layout is useful, since we have also different containers when also the hinge is located horizontally, then helps you a lot in order to implement apps that they follow the companion pane and dual view pattern, because you always can define you always have different containers so that you can have the different information. But also imagine that you just have you just need one container for the whole display area, even though when the app is spanned, you also can do that in the foldable layout. So it's very flexible, handles fragments as well. So it's a very, very flexible layout and very useful. So yeah, this is regarding foldable layout. For the foldable frame layout, it's similar, but what allows you is to define. So foldable frame layout is an extension from the frame layout. What you can do with that is to define also another specific views inside of this foldable frame layout, because at the end it's a frame layout. But you can define where the different items, the different views, the different components inside the frame layout, they are going to be shown in the left area of the folding feature, the right area of the folding feature, or spread using the whole width. So also it's useful for different specific scenarios. Bottom navigation view, I really like this component, this component. What we have done with this component, I think is very helpful and useful. So bottom navigation view is also an extension from the framework bottom navigation that has been there forever. So developers are super used to use that. It's super important apps, they are using this pattern. So it's very common. Okay. But bottom navigation, as we have mentioned before when we were talking about the navigation rail, bottom navigation, when you have a lot of display area, such as in a foldable, in a span mode, or in a large screen tablet, it's not very, very useful, no? Because you have the whole width and maybe you have just 3 options. Maybe you have more, but maybe you have 3. So and they are all together there in the middle. So not very, very accessible even. So I would say even that. So what we have created, or what we have extended from that component, we have implemented the ability to move the information, the options from the bottom navigation to the left display area from the folding feature to the right display area, or even using the whole width, but handling the folding feature. So there is not information that the hinge or folding feature is hidden. So you are not going to have an option placed there in the middle that is that you cannot see what option is that. So the item is going to be moved to the left, to the right. It's up to the developer. It's very configurable as well. So yeah, this is what the extension from the bottom navigation does. I think it's very interesting. And then the last one is what we call Foldable Layout Manager, or also Recycler View extension. And basically, we have extended the Layout Manager functionality, and quickly, I will say that, for instance, you just have to think in a list, in a list of items, that when the list of items is running on an app, on a single screen device, you have the list of items, you scroll through the items, that's all, period. We have seen many times. Okay, but when the app is spanned across displays, for instance, in the case of Surface Duo, that now you have a lot of display area, by default, so if you were using the width match parent, because exactly in a single screen device, a small screen, it makes totally sense. I mean, it's small, 6 inches, we can still consider it small. So it makes sense. It's taking the whole width, fine. You have there your different items, an email with whatever. But when that is running in the tablet or in a foldable device, having a rows like this big doesn't look nice. No, and also it's a kind of waste of space or of display area that we have. We could do more things now that we have more. So what we have implemented is the ability to, when an app using this library is running on a foldable device, then it's going to detect where the folding feature is located, and it's going to show that information from the list, but in two lists. So you are going to have one list in the left area and the other list in the right area. But it's just one. Actually, when you scroll everything, but you see more information and you don't see items that they are like the whole display area with. No, so I think it's very it's more useful. So for instance, actually, we can see this pattern. This implementation, for instance, in the Xbox Game Pass, when you run Game Pass in Surface Duo in expand mode, the list of different video games that you can see in Game Pass, now you see one list in the left and the other list on the right, and there is no information hidden by the hinge, because they are also following this scenario, this pattern. Actually, we were inspired by that. So very, I will say that this component is very helpful. So far is what we have, but we are currently working on enhancing the other components that we build for Surface Duo. So very soon, very soon, we are going to have all of them completely fold aware. So you can use them in other foldable devices that use Jetpack Window Manager under the hood. And I would say that's all.
Thank you very much, Cesar, for the insight that you've been providing us, and you'll be joining with us later on the Q&A session as the last session of this event. So if the audience has any questions, you please feel free to type them into the question fields, and we will let you go now, and we'll see you later on in an hour or so. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
We have now scratched a little bit of the new libraries, new possibilities from the development perspective. Intentionally, we didn't dig that deep into the code base because we wanted this opportunity to provide also for the designers, developers, product managers who don't need to be that deep hands-on. There is a lot of resources available to go deeper in the code. There is a lot of events, recorded events that will tell more. We'll provide links to those at the end of after this event. You will find them on our website. And thank you on my behalf. And now I would like to hand over to Mikko.
Thank you, Ilpo. Ilpo covered in his presentation how to build applications. And before that, we heard from Claudio, what else can we do, meaning the design. My favorite question is why. So why should we believe that people want more display? Sometimes it's helpful to look into the past to predict the future. If we go back all the way to 2007, that's the year iPhone was launched. Smartphones existed already before that. The definition of smartphone being that you can multitask and you can download applications. A typical smartphone before 2007 is here, Nokia E51. It has a 2-inch display. It was considered a big display at the time. Then iPhone was launched and the display grew to 3.5 inches, and the trend has continued ever since. The latest, largest iPhone, iPhone 13 Pro Max, has 6.7-inch display. And while the number change doesn't look so big, in reality you can fit 3 of the E51 displays into one original iPhone, and you can fit 3 original iPhone displays into the largest iPhone display today. That's a 9-fold increase. It's 17% year over year for 14 years. So the trend is there. Bigger displays have been coming all the time. What else can we do to show more? Resolution. So back in 2007, a typical phone resolution was QVGA, which is 77,000 pixels. And it has increased 50-fold today. And there's not much more we can grow there. The resolution is already so sharp that your eye can't detect anything better. What else have we innovated as an industry to fit more, to show more? We have gotten rid of the passive areas. So here you see blue representing the size of display and red the total footprint. We started from something like 25%. You can see that in the original E51, display was roughly the same size as the input area, the keypad. With the touch phone, we got rid of the keypad and we doubled the display size. And again, we've been working year after year as an industry to get rid of the passive areas. There's not much more we can go here. We are already very close to 100%. Or is there? This is why we believe that foldables and dual phones are the future. People want to see more, they want to do more, and they want still a pocketable form factor. Something that's convenient to use with your one hand, two hand, and you can fold away to your pocket. We can still ask why. Why do people want bigger displays? There has to be some kind of explanation for that. And this is a topic that has been studied since long before we started talking about foldable mobile phones, namely in the PC times. So there is a number of different research going back years, pointing out that the larger the screen, the more screens, people work better. So 33% less errors, 18% more efficient, 42% productivity increase, and 80% increase in performance. And these numbers are from PCs and laptops, where you are desk-bound and you're just comparing different screen sizes. There is one additional benefit when we talk about mobile. With mobile, when you have more screen, you can mobilize more of your processes. And why is that important? Well, the point of the mobile phone is it enables you to do things right where you are, whenever you are. And this is important. Why? This is a study that was done in the 1885, and it's a forgetting curve. So human brain is quite capable of processing information, but it's also very good at forgetting information. And much of that forgetting happens during the first minutes, first hour, and so on. So I'm sorry, Claudia, but people have already forgotten half of your presentation by now. That's why it's important that you can complete your processes, complete your tasks early on, wherever you are. So if we think about the mobile processes, let's take an email as an example. Mobile email existed 20 years ago. Back then, it was a short message service that provided some characters of your email and you could read it. BlackBerry introduced the keyboard, we could give some rudimentary answers, we could see more, but this is an example of a mobile process that hasn't been completed. Typically still today, you use your mobile email to read and give short answers. If you have something longer to answer, you probably go to your desk and you complete that. We can again zoom out and look at the history of the communication. So back in the day, we had landline phones. We called places, not people. If the person happened to be there, you got in touch with them. In North America, the pagers were popular after that. So you could reach out to a person, but it was one-way communication. Text messaging was a revolution globally. So people started texting and responding, so that mobilized much of the process. And then, of course, with the smartphones, we could consume richer content and do more. But there are still limitations in our mobile work. So what are those limitations? One is the screen size. How much can you see at one go? And since we got rid of those keypads that were present in the early days, we are always struggling between how much do we show and how much do we dedicate for the keyboard or number pad. Another part that really hasn't evolved in the mobile space is the multitasking. So if you think about what you do with your computer at your desk, you have multiple windows open and you are easily multitasking, whereas in a mobile phone we are clicking in between applications, back and forth, swiping, pressing buttons. So let's switch gears. Let's look at the roles. What kind of jobs should we be mobilizing? So there are some examples like if you are a software developer, most of your work you do at your desk. You don't really benefit of the mobility as much as if you are, for example, product manager. You are moving from one meeting to another. You are constantly getting more information, making decisions, and sending information. It's a more mobile job as such. Doctors, another good example. If you had patients that are in their beds and you're making your morning rounds, you need to be mobile and then go back to your desk. So second comparison is that where do you need your big screen to be pocketable? So the doctor doesn't want to carry a full tablet with him. If you are a forklift driver in a warehouse, you are mobile, but there is ample space in your forklift where you can mount a tablet, so pocketability, foldability is not adding much of the value. Then there are maybe third dimension are the people like how far are they mobile? Are they within the reach of the Wi-Fi, or do they need the benefits of a mobile phone? So 4G, 5G connectivity. If you are a sales rep, if you are in the field, then you're going to need that. Let's look at the motivations of the developers. Many of us want to explore the new frontier, be the first one to do something. And that is what the foldables, dual screen, large screens enable. You're not one of the zillion developers solving the same problem, but you can be somebody who's setting trends and bringing something new to the market. Another motivation is then the monetary motivation. So there are different kind of applications. So in some cases, the application is the value proposition, like mobile gaming. Depending on then your monetization model, it can be paid, it can be freemium, or so on, but you're building it to make business with the application. In some cases, application is an important part and enhances the value proposition. So Atlassian is helping people collaborate, and collaboration is often mobile, so the more effective the mobility can be done, the better. Uber is another example. When I land to a new city, I need to find my hotel address from my email or notes or reservation, and I need to book an Uber car, and that's an area where two screens would be immensely helpful. The third kind of application area is where companies can be companies' processes can be mobilized. So if we go back to the doctor example, let's imagine for a moment that you're a doctor and you're making your rounds. You're going from bedside to bedside, client to client, patient to patient. So you constantly get new information. You're looking at the lab results, you're looking at the charts, you're consulting the patient records, and you need to make decisions on the spot. Some of those decisions you can do on the go, and some of those are by default desk-bound. So what if you could mobilize more? What if you had the information in your hands? Would you give better care? Would you maybe make less mistakes? Would you even avoid litigation? So if you can make a doctor's life 5% more efficient, you are not anymore talking about the cost of the device or the cost of the application, but the benefits of mobilizing things. And that's how we see that there is need for bigger screens. It's backed up by data. There is research. There is people are saying that they want to have more screen in their pocket, and we can link this into developer motivations and back to the clients and customers and the benefits we provide for them. So now I would like to introduce to the stage Andras Nemeth. Welcome, Andras. Good to have you here.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, thanks. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Excellent.
Nice to be here.
So hey, I think most of our audience knows Atlassian, but why don't you give a brief introduction about yourself and the company?
Yeah, Atlassian is a software company that has been around for a number of years. I think one of the most well-known product would be Jira. Everybody who's been in software came across it at some point in time, but Atlassian has other products such as Confluence, Bitbucket, and so on and so forth. And Jira branches out into a number of sub-products to support a number of use cases, from agile software management to ITSM and more. Myself, I'm Andras. I've been with Atlassian for a bit over 5 years, and I've been working as a software engineer on the Jira Android or Jira native apps team, working on our mobile and native offerings.
Okay, excellent. I've been asking why many times today. That's my favorite question. So let me ask you, so Atlassian has been building software for a number of mobile form factors. Why did you choose to start building for the large screen and dual screen devices in the first place? I think that would be interesting for many of the people who are maybe not as far ahead on this journey as you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, we had solutions for mobile phones for a long time, and especially in Jira on the iOS side, we have very good iPad support for a number of years now. And we found that a larger form factor suits better for use cases when someone is not doing micro interactions, maybe someone in an oversight role. And we wanted to do that for a long time for Android as well. We just really haven't had the time or the opportunity. So up until recently, we've just been planning. And then we decided that this is the time to start supporting large screen devices. Not just because of tablets, they've been around for a long time, but there's been a recent uptake in form factors in Android that are configurable and presents a larger screen from a smaller form factor. And that's something that we found really, really interesting. There's a number of devices, such as the Surface Duo from Microsoft, a number of foldables from Samsung, upcoming devices that you can hear about here and there, and also, support for Android apps on different other platforms like the Chrome OS.
Okay, excellent. So that's good to hear because it kind of validates what we have been talking earlier here. So bringing content into form factors in a consumable fashion, choosing what you present, and that depends on the capabilities of the hardware. So could you talk about a little bit about the you had probably assumptions when you started to work, what to present, how people are going to react. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did it turn out? Did those assumptions hold true, or did you find out something you didn't expect?
Well, I think those assumptions held true. Again, we didn't have to assume because we already have had a good experience. But we've seen through our metrics that the uptake in tablet usage on our side has increased. And if you look at the past 2 years, due to events happening in the world, large screen device usage has been increasing, tablet usage has been increasing, and we could see that on our end. That kind of validated that targeting larger screens is in fact a good idea and a good investment, as well as even Windows 11 now has support for Android apps, so we can present ourselves on other platforms than we initially anticipated. So definitely.
Okay, so it sounds like you are pretty user-centric. You are considering what is a relevant use case for your audience. You consider the capabilities of the devices, and then you present information that is relevant for that use case for that audience.
Yes, exactly. So basically, we already had bits and pieces of our application that we wanted to present on a larger screen device, right? So there was an engineering assumptions that we can recompose our existing components, change the layouts, and at times, present more information. But we also know that sometimes, having a bigger screen real estate doesn't mean that you have to jam more content onto the screen, right? So one of the things that we did to adjust our experience is to provide alternative views of certain screens that we had in the application, such as our roadmap view. Our roadmap view was originally just a list of roadmap items that you can navigate, but it lends itself better to be a Gantt chart on a larger screen device. So in this case, we didn't only just, reuse our components, reorganize them, relay them out. Some cases we provided alternative screens that are better on a large screen device, that are better for having an overview of what's happening, what's going to happen. It's really, really good for planning, again, for people, where it's at roles.
That's actually pretty interesting. So we have talked a lot about how larger screens and dual screens enable us to show more. But you bring out something very, very interesting there. It's not always jamming more content on the screen. So when you have a bigger screen, you can present the same information maybe in a more digestible way. So there's more white space around it, or it's easier to consume.
Yeah, exactly. And also on the other hand, right, building the large screen experience is not necessarily about those micro adjustments on a large screen. You want to utilize a bigger screen to be able to present the information in an easier consumable way, to make navigation easy, to require less interactions. But on the other hand, there are certain aspects of certain devices that present new ideas, new possibilities that you can use to your advantage, right? So for example, if you have a foldable device, yes, when you open it up, it acts as a tablet. But if you put in a certain posture and put it on your desk, right, you can create something that is a good companion for your work, looking at notifications, having some extra information, basically using as an extra screen. So large screen, part of it is providing more information, better navigation, sometimes alternative views. And in some cases, utilizing the device's unique abilities, capabilities, and configurations to present something in a different way, in a more practical way, to provide a companion experience to, for example, what you have on the desk.
That's interesting. So you talk about companion experience. Earlier we discussed, you talked about the glance and expand kind of functionality. So we're kind of coming back to the old concepts that were around before the touch monoblocks took over. So for example, I'm looking at the old Nokia communicator, which followed the same logic. You had the glance window, and then you had the expand window.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect metaphor, right? When you have a device that is small and foldable and you can put it in your pocket, right? You get a notification, you open it up, and you decide, well, yeah, I know what's happening. I don't have to do anything right now. Put it back in my pocket. But maybe there is something very important. You have to, do some planning value on the way. You have to type out something lengthy or do something more complicated. You can open the device up, do that work, close it up again, put it in your pocket, right? You don't have to carry your laptop around. And sometimes that would not even be practical. Like you're on a jam train. It's just impractical to do that. Or carry a big tablet around because you have to take it out from your backpack. Pocket, open, do what you need to do, fold, put it back in your pocket. It's very efficient, can be very efficient.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. That's again validating something we discussed earlier today about people wanting to have more screen with them and how that enables mobilizing more processes, and that's the benefit of devices like Surface Duo. On that note, there is a quite large developer population who has already tried building on large screen devices, but maybe haven't entered the dual screen yet. You have already taken that step. So could you talk a little bit about that experience? Any hints or tips there?
Yeah, sure. Certainly. So originally when we set out to do this large screen work, we were primarily focusing on foldables. We kind of had in the back of our minds, it was exciting, especially with the Surface Duo. It's a foldable device, but two distinct screens. And so we were trying to figure out how we can, support a wider range of devices without, investing too much in one particular device. You never know, if that is going to take off or not, or you don't quite know necessarily that your user is going to be utilizing that device, but you kind of want to target them, right? So basically, we looked at this problem not by supporting the Surface Duo. We looked at how we can take existing pieces of our application, components, UI elements, how we can provide alternative screens, layouts, and navigation for different device form factor without necessarily focusing too much on one particular device. And ultimately it comes down to scalable UI that has been, scalable web pages have been a thing for years, right? So why would developing for a mobile device be different? Yes, there are certain aspects of it that make it unique, right? Surface Duo has a seam in the middle of the screen, whereas a Samsung Foldable would not. But it's just a very, very small part of it. And then there are libraries provided by Microsoft, and there are libraries also in Android X that will give you that, device information, so you can code against one API with little to no specialization to one particular device. So basically, I think for us, we had most of our screens already implemented as a fragment or as a view that could be plugged into certain pieces. So it was basically taking Lego pieces and then putting them into a frame and then just designing the frame and thinking about how we can show different contents in a different layout so that it makes sense and it's going to be more practical, easier to navigate, and better to use.
That sounds like a win-win. So you get it's good engineering, but then also from users' perspective, there is this family look and feel. So if you move from one device to another, it's not like learning a totally new experience. And then over time, like on a portfolio level, you don't have multiple baselines, so it's manageable. It's an investment into the future as well. Okay, that's
absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
There's this aspect of it, right? That is about engineering, right? An engineer is always interested to solve problems, but there's always have to be some kind of user value. Whereas in this case, the two kind of match, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds good. Any other tips or hints that you would like to give for our developer audience?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about tablet or supporting large screen devices, apart from using that as an opportunity to provide a better user experience, is also a good way to go back, think about your architecture, think about your design, think about your user experience in general. So I think it's a good practice. I would say try to not focus on one particular device unless you have a very specific use case where one device or one family of devices are more desirable than others. And try to look at the bigger picture. Try to think about how your application will scale with the different screen sizes. Also, maybe try not to be very specific about certain screen configurations, because in Android it's number of different devices with different configuration. There's been even more so in the past. And then maybe try to think more in terms of device classes. That has also been a theme recently at that summit as well. So I would urge to look at those videos and then try to build that into your thinking. So if you think like this, it's not going to be, the Surface Duo, the Samsung Z Fold, the Windows 11 or Chrome OS. It's going to be how your UI is going to scale as you have more screen real estate. And then, again, maybe thinking about how a hinge can be to your benefit rather than complication that needs to be solved.
Okay, so one clarification still on that. So if you have a portfolio of devices and it keeps expanding all the time, how do we, in your experience, balance between keeping the familiar and yet kind of bringing out the novel aspects of the new form factors, new devices?
Very good question. I would say really depends on your use case, but if you're not really doing something specific, right, I would say focusing on the uniqueness is good, but it might be a big investment. On the other hand, again, if you know that your software is going to be used in a particular settings, that's when I would really go into utilizing those aspects of the device. But other than that, just think of it as a big canvas, a piece of paper that can be folded in a number of ways, and that might give a good balance or way of thinking when you're trying to think about how much more customization and specialization I'm going to put into my implementation in order to support all the uniquenesses of every different devices. And practically, you can't really support all of them, right? So,
picking your battles, yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Hey, thank you, Andres. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. And Andres is going to be with us in the Q&A session. So if you have any questions in your mind, please send those to us. We're going to continue after I do a bit of wrapping up with Andres and the rest of the team. Thanks, Andres.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So let me do some recapping. So that was very insightful and informative. We heard Andres talk about the experiences that he has and the Atlassian team has, how to avoid some of the pitfalls, how to speed up your development, touching many of the points that Claudia was referencing earlier. The way Atlassian has built this portfolio is that they build support for iPad and then later for large screen and foldable devices. So keeping the investment level manageable, incrementally building support for new devices and treating it as a family. It also makes sense to zoom out and look at the challenges. So if you consider the large screen and dual screen devices as a family rather than bespoke devices, it's probably a better business case. And you're also solving the problems piece by piece, so it makes it more manageable. One thing to remember is that you may not have the same experience that Andres has and the Atlassian has in this space, so don't be shy to reach out. There are people who can help you out with the design, with the thinking, and with the development. So Atlassian and Andres are in a great position. Andres is a developer, so he knows how to build collaboration tools and software. Atlassian is a technology house. It may be more challenging for some of the developers who are, if you're building an application for TikTok, or like we discussed earlier, the case that you are building an application that helps doctors on their field. I would claim that most of the developers don't have the luxury of understanding intimately their end users' needs. And this again brings us back to the point that Claudio was making. We need to research the users, understand the processes that we are planning to mobilize, and really empathize with their challenges and their problems. And that is how we can bring meaning to technology. So I would like to congratulate Atlassian. They've been in the forefront and they keep challenging themselves. So they are reinventing, re-innovating the space, embracing the challenges of the mobility and bringing their solution to new form factors to help their audience. Thank you. That concludes the presentation part of the Design Code launch. And now it's time to turn this event interactive. We have here in the studio Ilpo and Claudio with me, and online we have all the panelists. So we have Mehul, Andres and Cesar. We have already received some of the questions, but you can continue submitting them through the chat box. So why don't we get started? The first question is in the design area. So how do you decide when to build a design prototype using Figma, etc., versus a proof of concept built by engineers to test your designs?
I think I wouldn't differentiate the two. What I think is the best way forward is to get the designers and the engineers working together early on, because they come at the problem from different angles. And I think the designers can be involved in kind of planning that experience with the engineers, and maybe working on a lower fidelity proof of concept initially, and then getting that tested. And then based on those results of the test, just keep kind of working in layers of fidelity towards a final product. So yeah, I think getting both teams involved is the best way forward. I know it's a bigger investment up front, but I think it pays for itself in the long run.
So we're going back to the same theme we discussed before, bringing design closer to development.
Exactly.
Okay, sounds good. Anything anybody wants to add?
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. When we were working on certain new projects that involves design, we do prototypes, designers get working, we work together, figure out what will actually work on the device. Obviously, you have to balance cost as well. I mean, in terms of investment, so I think that's usually works out the best to do that this way.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Andres. I think we can continue with you now that you got started. So there's a question for you. How long a time did it take for you to build the dual screen app on top of the iPad app?
Yeah, we've been thinking about it for a long time, so summing it up would be hard. I think it took about 2 months. We did a lot of pre-planning. We would play with the design. I did some spikes to test certain things. But yeah, all in all, I think it didn't take us more than 2 months, give or take, a week.
Okay, excellent.
And that's basically like 1.5 developers, 2 developers working. So it's not like a large team. So.
Right. Okay, thank you. Then maybe a little bit more technical question. Are there emulators for all these different form factors for Android Studio?
Yeah, so Android Studio has all the different foldable devices there, potentially that possible that they are on the market. Of course, they always come a bit late. And also, for example, you can download from the Microsoft Pages the Duo emulator and use that. Extremely easy to use, download, run, test. So we will provide the links to all the resources on our website after the event. So just give us a few hours to update that. So you will get everything there. I don't know, Cesar, would you like to add anything here?
No, basically, exactly what you have mentioned already. So, through Android Studio, through the SDK Manager, you can download and install many different emulators. You can define also the platform version that you want to use. So, for instance, you can use emulators already with the Android 12L if you want also to try out the new things, like for instance, embedded activities. And exactly for our Surface Duo emulator, we have both versions, Surface Duo version 1 and Surface Duo version 2 already available in our website for all platforms, Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. So yeah, as you have mentioned, it's just download and try. And actually, we try to mirror the same experience that you can get in a real device in the emulator. So you can test like the span mode, even the interaction, all the things that we have, new things for Surface Duo for the auto span in the settings and so on. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. And Mehul, don't worry, there's a question for you as well. You get to talk. So, what are the key differences between designing for the Duo and other Android foldables?
Well, there's not much difference because most foldables and like Surface Duo and Surface Duo 2 like fall in the same category. So when you're trying to design something for a foldable, it's going to work across all the different folding form factors. But there's some things to note, like not all foldables are going to be similar. There are some foldables which have physical hinges and there are some which don't have physical hinges. But it's important to understand that places where there are like hinges and things like that, some of your UI elements are not going to be as useful because, when you like fold the device around, it's going to be unreachable for a user to have those touch targets involved. So it's important that to consider those set of notations when you're trying to design foldables. So in general, like when you're trying to design for any foldable, it's a really good space that you're going to like touch upon a various different number of devices that you're going to design for. So there's not really much key differences apart from like, how the physicality of each device is. But that's about it.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that answer because we discussed this with Andras earlier and talked about this like incremental investment that if you have already touched the foldables, bringing the Duo into the portfolio, the installed base is growing, but the additional effort required for that is quite manageable and reasonable. Okay, so I think we're going to continue on the design. In the presentation, you discussed about the 5 design patterns. Are those more of a guideline or are they strict rules?
Well, they're not like strict rules. They're kind of like a guideline, but something really handy because when it comes to designing, we really want like all designers to be really creative in the process. But when we were doing research and we were able to brainstorm a lot of different applications for foldables, and we came across like several different like patterns that are existing scenarios that will help in certain use cases. So we came up with 5 different design patterns, which I've showed that in the presentation. But there's also opportunity for like new design patterns to appear tomorrow. So we really want this is a creative space, right? So there can be more patterns tomorrow based on like the kind of applications you're trying to solve for. So like for example, if you have a social media application, you're going to have a very different pattern as compared to the ones out there. So we have placed together like those guidelines along with inspiration as a source so that you can start thinking about like what your app is going to look like tomorrow. So these patterns are open-ended and allow more room for growth tomorrow. It all depends upon the kind of business case you're trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think if I can add to that, I think we also encourage the designers out there, if they do come across a new pattern, to just communicate with Mehul and work together to add it to the design patterns that he's got in his Figma kit. That would be great because then it can be passed on to other designers as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's switch gears then. So Cesar, be prepared, this one comes for you. Does it matter which layouts are used on Window Manager, like Constraint, Linearity, etc.?
Yeah, you can use. So what Window Manager provides you is the information, and how you handle that information is up to you. So you can use the different components: linear layout, frame layout, relative layout. Definitely, the best one is constraint layout or motion layout that also extends from constraint layout. Why that? because with constraint layout you can constrain. You can use one new component that is called reactive guide, and then you can attach this component to the folding feature, and then whenever the folding feature or whenever there's a folding feature, then this is going to help you to align your different components, avoiding the folding feature. So thanks to that, you can realize, okay, automatically, for instance, you can move components using motion layout and reactive guide. So the components, they move accordingly when the folding feature is shown, or the folding feature is in vertical or horizontal, and so on. So definitely it was with all different components, but the best one will be constraint layout, motion layout, and with the help of reactive guide as well. I'm not talking about the sliding pane layout or even our components, because at the end, our components, they use Window Manager under the hood. But like talking about the common components or common layout that we have in the framework, I will say that definitely constraint layout, motion layout, and reactive guide, they are the best ones.
Okay. So Andras, let's get back to you. What kind of feedback have you received from your users regarding your mobile app on different platforms? Do people that try dual screen like it?
Yeah, so we had little direct feedback. People like to, sometimes emphasize when things are not working, and when things are working, that's kind of being taken as a given. But we're trying to be data informed. So looking at the usage of our application on different platforms, definitely have an increase on tablet, foldables, and also a Surface Duo. Obviously, because there's so many devices, it's really hard to get a big flock of people on one particular device. But we did have some direct feedback saying that, hey, this is actually a great application and applies very well for Surface Duo. So I think all in all, our large screen and dual screen endeavors were positive, indirect and from direct feedback as well.
Okay. Anybody else feedback you want to share? Anything you heard?
It would be really hard to put it in words. I think it's more that the way, for example, let's say we have our board, right, or we have our backlog. The positive feedback that we got is actually that's a great way to do planning, right? Or the same thing for our roadmap view as well. Not saying that this would be not just as positive experience on a large screen device. However, due to the Duo having that physical divide, it actually creates that nice separation, which allows you to focus on the part of the work that you're actually doing.
Sure, thank you. Then there's a cluster of questions where to get more feedback. So the first one here is, how do I get more information on Duo devices? And since we are talking about ecosystem, I think this means for developers, designers. Maybe Cesar, Mehul, any direction you want to point people to?
Sure. So the question is, where can we find resources? So developers can find the different resources?
Yeah, how do I get more information? It doesn't specify what kind of information, but because the team here is building large screen, dual screen applications, I would assume it's in the design development context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, definitely what we have in our Surface Duo documentation is we have a lot of the different documentation for starting from design, from the different dual screen patterns that Mehul has mentioned, the Figma design kit. Then we go through the different libraries that we have built for Kotlin, the information about that. Also, we have information regarding the different platforms that we also support, like Flutter, React Native, Xamarin, and so on. What else? Also, we have a lot of different samples in GitHub, like Jetpack Compose. Actually, we have libraries and samples for Jetpack Compose. We have samples for Kotlin, for Java, for Xamarin. We have even a training for Xamarin, so you can create Surface Duo dual screen apps for using Xamarin. And actually, we partner with Google, and we are really, both Google and us, we are really happy and proud of that, of the collaboration, because we created together Code Lab. Is the Window Manager Code Lab that you can go to the general Code Lab website from Google, and there you can learn everything regarding Window Manager and how to use Window Manager, how to enhance your app for foldable and dual screen devices. Actually, we updated recently, and for Android Summit with the latest version of Window Manager and so on. And a part of our resources, I will also highlight the resources that you can find in Google site regarding large screen and foldable devices, the foldable development, because there is also a lot of things where you can find things about Window Manager, sliding pane layout, also how to deal with ideas as well about the design, how to sadly start thinking about enhancing your app for foldable devices, for large screens, so they look better, and so on. So I would say that even though we are kind of starting, but there is already a lot of different information, even videos in YouTube. You can find a lot of videos from Google, but also from us. Every Friday we stream 30 minutes in Twitch, where we talk about everything regarding dual screen development, foldables, and so on. Later we upload everything to YouTube. We also have a Surface Duo blog. So every Thursday we publish a new blog post, and a lot of things. I think it's easy to find. I think you all later will get all the different links that we have mentioned here in this workshop. And I don't know, Mehul, did you want to add something else?
Well, yeah, Cesar, I think you touched upon every single aspect from the website to the resources available in the documentation to the code and design. Well, I don't want to tell the same thing to my to the whole audience today, but yeah, we do Twitch streaming, we do YouTube, but on that, we are very proactive on Twitter. So if you feel like you have something, Twitter is the place to just have a fast conversation and chat and get reaching out to us. And then of course that Twitter handle is going to help you to dive into the website and the documentation, where you can actually formally reach out to us with feedbacks and things, and through our email account. So apart from all the resources, Twitter is also another place where we do a lot of sharing out and activities, and we're really active on that, and we keep looking for new inspiring ideas and see ways where we could provide an opportunity for someone. If someone's done design, if someone's done a cool app, and if they want to showcase on a platform, we have weekly blogs that we run. And if something is really inspiring, what we do is we give them an opportunity to share their work with us, see if we can help them to give this platform to blog about their work. So it's something that we also do apart from just sharing documentations and resources, that we also want to leverage this whole community of designers and developers around. So this is also an open invitation. If anyone wants to do some cool stuff in this hackathon, or in any kind of project that you're building, you can actually use that Twitter and just tweet us, or put something on the web, and we can find you can find us, and we can look for ways where we can promote your stuff.
And also we will be sharing links to these resources at the event website after the event. So we'll provide you all the links that there are that were mentioned here. So you'll have access through the event site.
Excellent. The second question here in this cluster is related, to make sure that it doesn't cover something that we didn't already discuss. So where to find more resources on dual screen application development? But it sounds like the resources that, for example, Microsoft provides are really addressing not only the Duo, but also other foldable devices. So I believe that we have already answered that question. Then the third question in this cluster, Ilpo, you're going to like this one. Can Avalon CX help my application development needs for dual screens? So you, Ilpo, and Claudio, you've both been involved with the Duo for quite a while, so.
Yes.
Short answer is yes.
Yeah, of course. We've been working with dual screen devices with Duo already for a few years now, and we have a team. It's not only us, but we have a team experience on this area. So definitely we are able to help. And also, if you have any questions, just ping us. We will be happy to talk more with anyone who's interested about this.
Claudio, you've covered it. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So then we're moving back to design. Are there any other things that I should consider to making an app aware of other open apps?
I don't know, Mehul, do you want to attempt this one?
Can you is the question related like open apps? Do you mean like when apps are like span across two screens?
The question just says an app aware of other open apps. So maybe you can cover different scenarios. The question is not very clear, but obviously there are different angles to this.
And I can think of, we spoke about drag and drop earlier. That's one way that one app should be aware of another app that's open. I don't know, are there any other ones you can think of?
Cesar, would you be able to comment this from the development perspective?
I'm not sure if I understood actually. The question.
So I think the question is asking that, like, if you are building an application, is there something that you need to be aware of while the other apps are open? Does the behavior of the application depend somehow on other applications that are open?
Do you mean like if there's one application open and there's another application open, like if there's anything that you should consider? Is that what it means?
I would assume so. It's hard to tell reading a question that came online.
Yeah, I believe so. Like how Claudio mentioned that, if there are two apps running on like two different screens, you can actually do a drag and drop from one application to another application. If the application like accepts that particular text coming from another application. But I would actually point to Cesar if that is more like in terms of development, so that I can give a better perspective about like how the drag and drop is achieved on like two different applications when they run on two screens.
Yeah. So regarding drag and drop, actually it's pretty easy to implement that, and it's not something that has been created for Foldables. Has been in the framework for already a long time. So basically, what an app developer has to implement is depending of what do they want to achieve. If they want to be providers of content, then they have to implement this drag and drop provider part. If they want to accept content, then they have to implement another thing. Of course, they can implement both things, drag and drop being a provider or being a receiver of content. And this is just following the current drag and drop API. So there is nothing new, nothing special for foldables or dual screen. And actually, it was pretty well. We actually have, I believe, some samples with drag and drop where you start dragging from, for instance, when you have two apps side by side, so independent apps. When you start dragging content from one app to the other, you are going to receive all the events that they are working, or they are part of the drag and drop functionality or implementation. And then with those events, whenever you get a call regarding this event, so I don't know, like your finger is start moving an item, so then you are going to get a callback. And with this callback, you can do things like, for instance, imagine that you want to, in that specific time, you want now to change the background of the drop area. You can do that because you get that information. So there are drag and drop is very useful and easy to implement. And I will say also something that is super easy, is just one line of code, that is launching an activity to the adjacent screen or the adjacent window in the case of a foldable device when running in multi-window mode. This is just is one line in whenever you create the activity, the intent to launch an activity, you just have to define a couple of specific flags. And with that, for instance, in Surface Duo, when your app is running, imagine in the left screen, and there is the adjacent screen is empty, then you can launch an activity there to the right screen. And in a foldable device running in multi-window mode, you have one app in one side, and another app in the other side. You also launch an activity to the adjacent window. Whenever and actually in this case, doesn't matter if it's empty or not, the activity will be launched there. So I would say that regarding that, or what we have understood with this question, I believe that these two things is the only thing that come to my mind, that whenever two apps are open, and things that you can do with foldables and dual screen.
Thank you, Cesar. So let's remember that the audience may be at a different point of application development journey. Some of them are very advanced, and some maybe just taking their first steps here. So thanks for covering the ground. Good. So then there's a question, maybe Andres, for you. What's been the hardest puzzle to solve while building large foldable or dual screen apps?
I think, well, we started a long time ago. The Surface Duo was not quite yet released. So there was the device itself. There was a lot of documentation from Microsoft and libraries being in development. I think our approach was a bit more complicated or different because we were trying to adapt our application to dual screen and large screen devices. And there were some behaviors in the application that we kind of wanted to preserve. So we did build our own custom dual screen foundation layouts because we wanted something a bit special, and that's how we could do things quickly. But I don't think that was really, really hard. Looking at the samples from Microsoft, looking at the source code, adding our own spice to it, that was actually quite easy. The second bit was rearranging the UI, making sure navigation items are in the right place. There was some tricky custom insetting inside the application that we kind of had to work out. Not saying that's the right way to doing it. Maybe if I start over again, I would do it differently. But once those have been done, how are we going to rearrange the navigation, how we're going to change insetting, and having the foundation to support major dual screen use cases, the rest was basically a repetitive way of adapting screens to large screen and dual screen devices. I think that's it. Most of it was pretty... Oh, sorry.
I would actually want to add on to that. The documentation earlier didn't have these complex things to look up on, but today there are guidelines that we have put forward. So it took us some time to go back and reflect how apps are designed for dual screens. So we started to investigate a lot, right? And apart from design patterns, there are also guidelines. So today, if you want to deal with a navigation, let's say if you want to deal with a bottom navigation for a single screen device to a dual screen device. So, there is a physical hinge, and there are scenarios that you have to think about. So when you unfold the device, it becomes to a larger screen, and that's when a bottom navigation, becomes a navigation rail. So components like that are also supported from Google. And recently in the Material Design 3 release, 2 weeks ago, they've also given out scenarios on their design side of Android, how, these scenarios can be covered. So there are a lot of guidelines right now so that you don't have to deal with such complexities as a lot of different apps had to deal in the earlier place. So they're just going to be super friendly to use if you just go onto the website.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So don't reinvent the wheel. And if your designers have an interesting, wacky idea, then maybe validate it. But it's technically feasible. Does it worth the investment? Does it worth straying away from the path or familiar patterns that would make your application feel natural to users coming from other applications?
Yeah, if I can add something there too, I think it's also important for the designers or engineers to try and get their hands on the actual hardware, because it's something else, testing in a emulator versus actually holding the device and folding it and seeing how it feels in your hands, and just understanding those ergonomic kind of changes between different postures. That really influences where you're going to place certain menus and how things should be laid out.
Andres, you mentioned right in the beginning that it wasn't that hard implementing that. That brought to my mind. We published a blog post that's available at AvalonCX.com a few months ago. How the application creation is primarily a design challenge. The technical challenges are not that complex. And with design challenge, we mean that you need to understand your client's processes. What are the problems that you are solving? And then when you have that covered, the technical implementation is not that challenging.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something more, Andres, while I interrupted you?
Yeah, I don't think that was too important. I just want to say that holding the device and actually playing with a physical device, I think it's very important. That's what we did with our designers, where we got together and just played around with it, looked at other apps. We tried to use it, figure out how we would use it, how things feel. I think that's really, really important to get a better understanding of what you want to do and how it's going to fit.
Yeah, and also there's another way to look at it. Like, let's say you might not have a physical device in a region where you're trying to design for. So the best case things to do is just have two phones side by side and see what your app can do, because now that becomes a larger screen as compared to just having a single screen device. This is something that one of my designers showed me how to think when you don't have a Duo and you're not accessible right now to have a certain device like that. So you can think about different creative ways to have two devices next to each other and see if you can put a larger a mini tablet size experience, which is also a larger screen experience, right? So things like that also you can play around with the existing device that you have to try to think more beyond just what a single screen can do to what a large screen can actually do for you.
So adding to that, if you take two phones and just glue them to cardboard, you can actually create your foldable. So there's a way around it if you want to be creative.
It's something funny here. When I was involved in the Duo early on, we didn't have access to the actual device, but we found a little sketchbook, a Moleskine book. It was, I think, one of the smallest ones. And we used that to kind of simulate the feeling of how it would feel when you open something up or fold it all the way over. And we just kind of sketched the UI on this little book with pen and paper. It was super fast, super low fidelity, but it really got us pretty far ahead because we got to sense how this would work and how layouts would change when you change the posture. So yeah, it doesn't have to be high tech. It can really go with super low tech solutions too.
Excellent. That was a good answer, good conversation. So, how do you decide what to show on a really small view versus when your app is, for example, spanned to cover the maximum available canvas? That might be a design question to start with.
Yeah, I think the consideration there comes to the context. So like you said earlier, you want to know who your customers are, what your customers are trying to achieve, but also try and understand what their day-to-day life looks like, because this is obviously a device, or foldables are devices that bring work with you on the go. So in different scenarios, different people might have different needs. And if you can understand the nuances of those contexts, you can start to decide which are the most important things that should appear in different layouts. Like, if you've got a very tiny layout, then perhaps you want to look at what are the most requested features of the app, or the most accessed features of that app. And then when you kind of compare that against the context of how the user might be using those particular features at that time, they might not make sense to appear on that screen. So then you might choose a different set of features to appear on a very small layout. And it could be a complete different situation when a foldable is opened up and someone's using it in its large format. So I think it's a mix of context and just understanding the use case.
Okay. Yeah. Mehul, you agree? You something to add there?
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Excellent. Then I think this is more technical. So, can you define minimum and maximum sliding panes?
Yes. The longer answer, yeah. In the code base, there is configurations that you can have a very good definitions, and basically there is actually the application that we used on the technical presentation. There was a slider that you were able to define the panes, and you could see how those behave. We'll provide you the access to the GitHub, and you can try it by yourself on the emulator. So basically we were running that on multiple different devices emulated, and you are able to play around with that to help you to understand that what would be the best configuration for your content and for your purposes. Cesar, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, no, actually just to highlight exactly that, for instance, for the, so like when you use sliding pane layout, you can define definitely, so sliding pane layout under the hood, as we have seen, is using window manager under the hood, so it's going to react regarding where the folding feature is located. So it's going to adjust the panes accordingly. But definitely when there is not a folding feature, like for instance in a tablet on a large screen, or also when even there is the folding feature, but you don't want like each pane to have. So you don't want that one pane is to one side to the folding feature and another to the other side. You also can define exactly the width for the left pane, for the start pane, and then it's going to take that. And then for the right pane, you can use the layout weight 1. So using the number 1. So then it means that, for instance, imagine that imagine that we have a device with 600 dps horizontal. The width, and then we define, for instance, a width for the left pane of 200. It means then that when you open an app in this specific device, because the left pane is smaller than the whole width, then it's going to be shown with these 200 dps. And the weight 1, it means that then the right pane is going to use the whole display area, even if it's more that you defined before. So, for instance, this scenario fits really well for tablets, where you can follow also this detail pattern with a sliding pane layout. There is no folding feature, no problem. You just define the width and the weight, and that's all. So, yeah, this would be the way to use a sliding pane layout.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then there's another, I guess this is a technical question, but it might be something others want to answer as well. Does it require more coding when creating apps for multiple platforms?
I mean, I will start. I definitely think that Andras faced for Andras was way more difficult than what is now. No, Andras and his team, when they did the Jira Atlassian app, there was not a lot of info. I mean, we had our info, we have even our old library display mask and some basic components that actually they were not using Window Manager. So actually they were just for our device. Now that Google is also pushing hard, other OEMs as well, as we have mentioned, we have a lot of different resources. Google has a lot of different resources, videos, blog posts, code labs. Even in Android Dev Summit was one of, I think with Jetpack Compose was the main topic in the last Android Dev Summit. So I will say that, of course, as always, whenever you want to achieve something, when you want to implement something, there is definitely work to do and can be more or less, also depending a lot of your architecture, how your architecture was created before. If you were using just one activity with multiple fragments, then I would say that probably with the current libraries that we provide, Microsoft and also Google, the enhancement should be easy. If you use different activities, then probably a little bit more work. But definitely now, with all the libraries that we have, all the different resources, yes, of course, there is work to do. But I wouldn't say that is, I don't know, I would say that same thing that, for instance, the work that requires to move to, for instance, Kotlin coroutines, I would say that even less probably for moving to foldable devices.
And
sorry.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Anders.
No, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with Cesar on that. But even starting early was not that complicated. I think where you might increase the investment if you're getting really specific about particular devices, and then you have to put in pieces that will maximize or the usage of that device. But I'm not sure that would be really productive unless your use case is specific to one hardware, right? Sorry for cutting you off.
And you have to remember that there is already over 250 million large screen and dual screen devices on the market. So starting from designing for multiple form factors and following that on your development and coding and architecture, it's not that much, but it definitely will pay off in the future when we see all the time that there's more and more new form factors, new devices with the non-traditional smartphone form factors coming out all the time.
And something we discussed with Andras earlier, so this is a space that is evolving, so this is a space where you can innovate. So you can you have the tools to technically build an application, it doesn't require that much work, but then if you want to try out something new and be the leader in this field, then of course you can invest more time in it. Excellent. So that is the questions we had this time. I would like to thank everybody here in studio. I would like to thank all the guests that joined us online. It's been a pleasure having you here on board with us. And that concludes our design code launch. This was provided to you by Avalon CX in collaboration with Microsoft. Thank you for joining us. We'll make the recording available. As Ilpo mentioned, we will make the links and other resources available. And if there was a question that comes to your mind later, we can continue the conversation at avaloncx.com. We hope that this has been inspiring for you and you continue building large and dual screen Android applications together with us. Thank you very much. Have a good day.